Why, hello, fellow Transformers enthusiasts. It is I, Noble 2 Productions, back with another episode of Out of the Box. So, IDW has recently, and by recently I mean like a year ago at this point, lost their license to the Transformers comics, which is unfortunate considering they had a really good run. IDW produced comics from literally the year I was born, all the way up until just about a year ago. And during their tenure, they created a wealth of original characters, from the evil Autobot medic Pharma, to Fulcrum, the disgraced Decepticon, to some other ones, most of which still haven't gotten figures, but a few of them have. I mean, we got Nautica in Titan's Return. Yeah, probably never going to be able to get my hands on that one. And just recently, we got an absolute surprise. Because yes, indeed, to everyone's amazement, including mine, we got none other than Tarn in the first wave of Legacy Evolution. Now, I've heard a lot of people don't actually know who Tarn is, so just a very quick explanation. He's basically the leader of the Decepticon Justice Division, which is Megatron's own personal murder, torture, death squad. So you can see why it was kind of a surprise that we got a toy of him. I mean, out of the DJD, he is probably the most child-friendly, considering he doesn't turn into, a spaceship that melts people in the cockpit, or have a giant grinder in his chest, or just turn into a goddamn electric chair. But even so, the fact that they even decided to do Tarn in the first place is pretty huge, at least in my opinion. And given how well he sold, I could definitely see us getting the rest of the DJD in the future. And when I say he sold well, I mean I literally had to resort to using Hasbro Pulse to get him. So, a week later, and $50 poorer, how is the figure? So, in his alt mode, Tarn transforms into a Cybertronian tank. Not quite an H tank, but kind of, I guess, more like a V tank, or a U tank? And from the one picture I could actually find on Google, this looks like a fairly faithful recreation, with a few things changed around just to facilitate, whole robot thing. But I think all things considered, it turned out well. As you can see up at the front, we have this sort of cowcatcher minesweeper thing with the Decepticon badge on it. Then we get to these two smaller, I guess, machine guns. These probably be machine guns on a real tank that can swivel, mostly due to transformation, and they do clip in. However, they don't sit, at least on my copy, they don't sit perfectly straight. They're always kind of flaying out a little bit. Anyways, up the front, we have this smaller tread section, as well as this much larger tread section. These two little armor panels with 5mm ports in them. The big treads also each have two 5mm ports. And back here, we have these other little guns that I didn't even realize were there. These are obviously the robot mode feet. And up here, we have these sort of, well, they become the kneecaps of the robot, but I guess they could be armor or exhaust ports. And back here, yeah, we get a little bit of kibble, but it can be excused. The only real sign of robot mode kibble that is, actually kind of a little annoying are the hands right here. But if you angle them in a certain way and just kind of, keep them hidden, they're not too bad. Being a tank, of course, has a very large turret, which is his robot mode weapon. And being a turret, it can swivel. It has a few locking points, and it just clips on with these two unique clips into those slots. And it can swivel, do a full 360, and go up and down a little bit for each of the two cannons. Now, all of the tank mode weapons are blast effect compatible. The guns, the cannons up top have a 5mm port in each of them, and these ones have a 2mm port that can accept blast effects. So that's pretty cool. And before we get to the underside of the tank mode, I think this might be, at least the first time that I can think of, the first time we've had vehicle mode kibble in the vehicle mode.
Wait, what do you mean we have vehicle mode kibble in the vehicle mode? Isn't that just, the vehicle mode?
Who are you exactly?
I'm Max. You know, your, childhood best friend?
I mean, of course I know who you are. I'm just, asking for the audience, considering this is the first time you've officially appeared on the channel.
Oh, I got you. Anyway, yeah, I'm Max.
Cool. Character introduction. Cool, fun. Anyway, what did you say?
Well, I was just saying, how could a vehicle mode have vehicle mode kibble?
Well, good sir, good Maximus Maximilian. Is that?
Huh?
Yeah, this is part of the tread. It's just kind of on the underside. It's there to make the treads look a bit more complete in robot mode, but it adds a little bit of kibble on the underside, and I just think that it's kind of funny that the treads have kibble of the treads.
Alright, this is, looking like some dream within a dream stuff, Chief. I'ma head out.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll see you later.
Yeah, see you around, bro.
Anyway, another feature of the underside is the robot mode head. Although, if you transform it as per the instructions, the head would be facing that way, so you would see the back. However, I found that doing that makes this sort of tab in a bit more flushly, but it's just, on my copy at least, doesn't really ever stay completely flush. But it's, that's a pretty negligible issue. But anyways, on the bottom, you also see these, which you would think are the typical little, tank caster wheels, so that the treads don't actually have to do anything, because, it'd be really hard to do that with a transforming robot. But they're not! It is a lie! These are fake! These are just little molded-in plastic nubs. And at first, I was really, really confused about it, until I realized that if these weren't here, this stuff would all just get, scratched and scuffed, and these would pretty much be like hovering a little bit on the back. So they're really just there to keep things in line. And yeah, I guess they do lift the tank like a millimeter off the ground. But unless you are at eye level with the floor, you're not really gonna notice it. Anyways, how's about some size comparisons? Here he is with Kingdom Core Class Soundwave. Here he is with Buzzworthy Bumblebee Origins Jazz. Here he is with Legacy Evolution Leo Prime. And here he is with high-grade Gundam Heavy Arms. So, that's basically it for Tarn's tank mode. So let's see him transformed. And here is Transformers Legacy Evolution Tarn in robot mode. And good lord, he's so cool. Like, I think we can all agree that this is, one of the best looking Decepticons. I mean, he is just effectively, if the Decepticon badge was an actual character. Well, and it wasn't Soundwave, but, whatever. Just look at it. It's cool. Objectively. And very detailed. Although, he's a little bit slimmer than his comic book counterpart, but it's not really that big of a deal. Part of me kind of prefers this look. It just looks a bit more proportionally correct. And that head sculpt is chef's kiss. Perfection. And in a relatively rare occurrence for modern figures, he does indeed have light piping. The torso is also very well sculpted with a nice gold Decepticon badge, which seems a bit redundant. These nice big pieces of tread, this sort of guns that kind of almost look like sword hilts coming out of his back, even though they're definitely not. I honestly feel like that was a missed opportunity for the bludgeon retool. Yes, there are some sections that are made of clear plastic, but I don't really think any of them are that structural, and they all seem like they're made of thick enough, durable enough plastic that it doesn't really worry me too much. Come down to the arms, he has these massive tread shoulder pads, which unfortunately do cause a bit of what I call Rodimus arm syndrome, where it just, that's not right. I mean, in theory, they could have had the joint kind of like this, but have it on this arm to get more of a natural-looking outward movement. But, you can't have everything. And yeah, the aforementioned vehicle mode kibble does actually help to make the treads look a lot more complete in robot mode. Although, I do feel like it's missing some paint. The legs are pretty long, but that's just kind of the Transformer style, you know, having really long legs. And they're just really nicely detailed with a lot of paint and these massive feet that definitely look like they would hurt to be kicked by. Gives them a nice, solid base. Now, as for accessories, it is currently attached to his arm. It is his iconic double fusion cannon. To be honest, I feel like this maybe could have been done a bit better. Like, it's really wide, so it kind of, I don't know, just doesn't quite fit the overall silhouette of the figure. And if I'm not mistaken, in the comics, it was a bit more like that, with just two smaller cannons just kind of stapled to each other and just glued to his arm, rather than having this old little post thing. This was really just in the tank mode, and I kind of wish you could do that. But at the end of the day, the weapon does still look pretty cool. And the right arm actually has a second port up here, rather than just the one on the left arm that you're supposed to plug the cannon into. But then that kind of gets in the way of the elbow, so I choose to have it oriented this way, and then just to plug it into the lower port. I'm good at this. Now, unfortunately, that shoulder articulation does mean that it's a bit harder to get a nice sort of outward one-armed firing pose without it looking a little weird. But I tend to prefer two-handed shooting poses with most Transformers, and he can definitely pull one off pretty well, partially due to the articulated fingers. And speaking of articulation, let's just get into that. We got a ball joint at the head, can look up really quite far, honestly, and can look down a little bit of side to side, and of course, a full 360 if you kind of move the chin out of the way. Shoulders, as mentioned, not great, but, you know, they can go out to a 90-degree angle, and they can do a full 360. Now, in here, we have this joint for transformation, which can also allow for extra articulation. However, I kind of wish it tabbed in somehow, because oftentimes when I'm posing it, these will just come down like that, and it's just not quite ideal. But of course, bicep swivel, and a nice elbow bend over 90 degrees, that's very good. A wrist swivel, which is always appreciated by me, and opening fingers. I'm so glad this is getting added to more and more figures nowadays. I mean, G-Axis has them, SS86 Hot Rod has them, Tarn has them, you know, a couple of others probably do that I'm forgetting. It's just a piece of articulation that I feel like is really nice to have, even though it's not essential. Anyway, he has a waist swivel. Can't actually go all the way around. There's something stopping it. So whatever. And then forward and back of the legs can get about 90 degrees both ways, a bit more than 90 frontwards. And an out and in. And the way that this sort of skirt armor is, it's sort of on a pin that's attached to this part. So you move the thigh out, it doesn't move with the thigh much. I don't know if this is quite ideal, but it works. Of course, a thigh swivel that cannot actually do a full 360. It can get very close, but then it gets locked up there. And a nice knee bend that's over 90 degrees. However, if you undo that little bit of transformation, you can get a brilliant knee bend. And his big old feet can pivot. Not the best pivot, but not too bad. And they can go forward that far and backward that far, which, you know, is definitely useful for me. And even with the janky shoulders, I just can't deny this guy poses like a dream. How about some size comparisons? Here he is with Studio Series 86 Spikewick Wiki. Here he is with Legacy Evolution Animated Prowl. And here he is with Legacy Evolution Metal Hawk. So, does Tarn live up to the hype? I think overall, yes. I don't know if I'd quite call him top 10 figures of the year material, though the year is still relatively young, so we'll see what happens. But I think he could definitely make top 20. And I'm just so glad we finally got an actual member of the DJD from actual Hasbro. And given how well this guy is sold, at least from my personal experience, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the rest of the DJDs someday. Obviously, they'd have to undergo some Pretty serious alteration, especially K-On. But overall, I think they could definitely make something work. So, on to the final verdict. Legacy Evolution Tarn gets an 8 out of 10 for alt mode, a 9 out of 10 for robot mode, a 9 out of 10 for articulation, an 8 out of 10 for paint and color, a 7 out of 10 for accessories, an 8 out of 10 for transformation, and an 8 out of 10 for structure, which gives Legacy Evolution Tarn an overall rating of 8.2, which makes him the first figure in the new series of Out of the Box to achieve Platinum rank. And keep in mind, Platinum rank is probably the highest you're ever going to see in any figure of Out of the Box, because Diamond rank, which is perfect 10 out of 10, virtually unachievable. That would require a toy being literally perfect, and personally, I don't think anything is perfect. So, it's only really there hypothetically. Honestly, the real only thing dragging this figure down, in my opinion, are those shoulders. I don't like very much. But they can definitely be worked around. It's not a huge deal. So this has been my review of Transformers Legacy Evolution Tarn. And until next time, I'm Noble2 Productions saying peace out.
Don't forget to like and or comment and or share and or subscribe and or follow the Instagram and or